Morning class. Today what we're going to look at is the reading a drawing example, and within this sheet you need to do two activities. The first part of the activity is to answer the questions. So down in the bottom of the table here you can see that there are letters. You need to allocate numbers that represent the face of that letter. So for instance, the letter A corresponds with the number 4 in the front view here. We have two views which are represented on a reading of drawing worksheet. We have an isometric pictorial view. There are actually two types of pictorial views. There's the isometric, which is represented by the 30-degree set on both faces. And you have an oblique, which is generally a front face, and then it's projected back on a 45-degree angle. The other view that is represented is an orthographic view. And the orthographic view, another word for it is third angle projection, which means that there are three faces drawn on a page which represent the three-dimensional object. We have the front view, we have a top view, and the top view is always above the front view. And we have a side view. In this drawing, it is a right side view. Now the second part of this activity is to do what's known as rendering. With the rendering exercise, you are going to render the front face in green pencil. You are going to render the side faces in blue, and you're going to render the top face in red. A general rule of thumb is that the longest face of a drawing is represented as the front view, or it's shown using an arrow. That means then that the shortest face that you see on a drawing is often the side view. Generally, the arrow will represent the front view, which means that the other face that you see is a side view. Now, an important tip when rendering is that you must get your colour nice and consistent. You don't want to use heavy lines when doing your colouring work, otherwise it will not look consistent. You will not have a nice even colour coverage on your drawing. To get a nice consistent colour, what you do is you shade very lightly first in one direction. You then come back after you've done most of, if not all of the box in that first colour. You then shade in the opposite direction going across the face using that same colour, ensuring that there are no white spaces and that your pencil doesn't cross over any of our lines. It is very important that your pencil is sharp and that you use the side of the pencil rather than the point, because the point will leave heavy lines which are often hard to then recolour in. Now, it doesn't matter if it's very light or very dark, the coverage needs to be consistent. Just like this drawing here, you see that the colour is very consistent. There are very little white spaces, if any, and the pencil doesn't go over any of the corners. Now, it is very important that you get a nice even colour coverage on your shading work. The example that I have is drawing 2 in that series, and we can see that this student has done quite a heavy pencil. He's used quite a heavy hand when doing his colouring work, and you can see a little bit more of that line that I was talking about, that it's not quite consistent. It is a very good drawing, however there are some simple mistakes, like going over the lines at the bottom and leaving white spaces, and you can see very heavy lines in the direction that he is actually coloured. Now, this is a good example. This is a good example, however the first example was much better. That concludes this tutorial.